Hello, welcome back to Grow Yourself Up. It's episode 13, and today I'm going to start to respond in part to a listener question around changing careers and the struggle of feeling like you're trapped in your career. This is a really, really big question, so I'm going to take a wide angle initially and give you some pointers around some kind of strategy that you can use in many different areas to help you as you consider your own career possibly and many other things in life. So when we have not had our own needs met growing up, it often feels like we see ourselves as a type of hologram. We exist or we are because of our relation to others, and it can feel very hard to see ourselves as a worthy, lovable person just as we are, because we are always considering ourselves in relation to others and how to meet those other people's needs. And here in this podcast, we're learning that we exist fully as a person. We get to allow ourselves what we need, and we get to color ourselves in all our beautiful potential. And we have value just because we exist. That's what I really, really want you to try and grasp from this. It can feel exceptionally scary to take action that supports us, just us, to take brave, loving action, because often we're obsessed with what others think. We're obsessed with how will this impact others. Will I still be seen as how I have been seen, or what my self-image is based on? And also often we tend to choose careers or make decisions based on what was considered important in our family of origin. And so it can feel really, really difficult and almost threaten your own sense of existence and safety to make decisions that are at odds with that. And one other thing that's really important to hold in mind is that it can be difficult to see possibility and hope, and to see that there are other solutions when we have trauma and wounding in our background. And that's for a couple of reasons. One of the most important reasons is actually related to our nervous system, because when we exist in a dysregulated state, we're going to be operating out of a survival state. So from a polyvagal perspective, we'll be in either sympathetic or dorsal. And when we're in those places, the thoughts that we have about ourselves and about our possibilities, our future, what options are open to avail of us, are not kind of expansive, abundant thoughts. They are thoughts based on fear. And so we want to be operating more from a place of regulation, because in that place we are open, connected, hopeful. We hold the belief that things can change. So that's why getting more regulated overall in our life improves many, many things, because the thoughts we have about ourselves change, and therefore what we believe we can create changes, and what we believe is possible changes. And that's not insignificant. In fact, that's a really huge thing. But what I want to offer you today is a broad framework to consider different options in your life. Because when we feel trapped, it feels like there's kind of no way out. And I want to suggest that there is always a way out. I want to start off by reading you something from Marianne Williamson's book, Return to Love. So I consider this to be a spiritual classic book. I return to this concept over and over again. And I love some of her writing because it's really held me in some of my darkest times. So I'm going to read you some words from her book. They are often actually misattributed to Nelson Mandela, but I think that's because he used them in a speech in the 90s. So the words are, our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There's nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine, as children do. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It's not just in some of us, it's in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we're liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. So I'm going to just say that last bit again. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we're liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. I consider this, which is what I would call post-traumatic growth, an extremely important part of our own healing journey, because we want to be able to work on our triggers and our pain and our dysfunction and have a more beautiful life. But we also want to be really able to step into our power and our agency and use that to create a life that we dream of. And when we've had trauma, it often feels like there is no hope. In fact, many of us think that we have very little agency, very little power, and no hope. And it's certainly true that there are major systemic problems in our world today. On this podcast, I want to encourage all of you to be in your own light. Now, that's a huge, huge thing to ponder, and it requires a lot of personal work and pondering your own situation and scenario. We all face different constructs. We exist in different constructs and in different systems, and things like our age, our race, our color, our religion, our socioeconomic situation, those all impact the way in which we experience the world and the amount of agency we experience. And even within that, we still have choices in some areas. And I want to introduce you to a concept that Marianne Williamson has in this book, Return to Love, which is the idea that we are either operating out of a place of fear or we are operating out of a place of love. And that in any situation, we are either operating out of one of these two states. And the idea is that operating from a place of love, when we make decisions based from this place of love, we will make much more open-hearted, hopeful, positive decisions that open us up to possibility. And when we make decisions from a place of fear, we will make much kind of smaller, more shut down decisions that may be more controlling, which we perceive will keep us safe. And I want to suggest that this can be used as a guide for many, many different things in the way you live your life. And particularly in a career sphere, you can keep on asking yourself, am I making this decision from a place of love or a place of fear? I'm going to go into this in more detail in another episode specifically, and I'll actually read you the listener question, but I just want to give this kind of overall framework to start with. And I can't share any client stories here, but what I can do is share some of my own career story to explain to you what I mean by this, because I think storytelling is really, really useful. So hold on to that and kind of roll this around in your head. How does it feel when you make a decision based on love? When you believe something will work out, or when you believe you're worthy of rest? And how does it feel when you make a decision from fear, when you're trying to control something or control an outcome? How does that feel in your body? Now, it's scary when we start to make decisions from a place of love, because it implies trust. Many of us with trauma and wounding, we don't trust. We struggle to trust people. We may struggle to form relationships. We struggle to believe that people have our best interests at heart. And therefore, we are always trying to protect ourselves from that. And so trying to kind of let go of that and believe that we're allowed to make decisions that are good for us and that will benefit us, and that other people may also want that for us, can feel really difficult. So it may feel challenging to start off with. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about my career and highlight some points where I made decisions based on fear and how that led me down a path. And then when I started to make decisions based on love. And when I say love, I mean love in a broad sense, love for myself, love for what I consider important, a belief in myself, a belief that I'm allowed to have a career that I love, a belief that I can add value in that career. In my family, it was really important to be clever. We were assessed on how well we were doing at school and, were we coming top of the class? And it was just really important to get top marks. And this is true for many people who've experienced trauma. Often when we've experienced complex trauma in childhood, being academic or having high intelligence is actually a route out of our family of origin. It feels like it provides the pathway that we could get to university, get a scholarship, or get out of our childhood environment. So it's really celebrated, and doing well at school has a way of masking many of the other things that are actually going on. So many of you might resonate with this story of cleverness and about how important it was because of what it represented. So when I left school, what I really wanted to do was be a teacher, but I made a conscious decision that it was important to do something that was perceived as clever. And also that I used to think I need to put myself under the money tree. And being a teacher didn't represent that. So I made a decision to go into financial services. I studied economics and economic history, and history of art, actually, which I did love in my undergraduate degree. And then I did a special year in South Africa. You have something called an honors year, and I did a special year of economics because I thought this was clever. And my parents valued that, and my mother was very into the financial market. So this felt like an important thing to do. If I had pondered a bit more closely and perhaps been more honest with myself, I would have allowed myself to acknowledge how interested I was in psychology, how interested I was in people, and how I loved pondering dynamics and the patterns of relationships that people get into and how we are relationally when we've had certain experiences of growing up. But I didn't think that psychotherapy, I don't know if I knew about psychotherapy actually when I was that age, but I certainly didn't think that doing psychology was something that was clever. So I made a decision there, you can see, out of fear, the fear that I wouldn't have enough money and that I wouldn't be considered clever. So I drove myself down this pathway of going into financial services. I worked first as an economist, and then I worked in investment banks, and then latterly as a management consultant. And ultimately, I quit that career because I began to become aware that it would eat my soul from the inside. I'm now in a career I love. So I practice in private practice as a psychotherapist. I host this podcast. I'm writing a book. I love writing. I love sharing ideas. And my work is my passion. It provides me so much. I get a lot from doing this job, and it keeps me interested every single day in a way that working in financial services never did. But it's been a journey to get to this place. So I left the city for a period of time before I retrained as a psychotherapist, and I set up a business in maternity underwear. And that was a big failure, actually, that business. At some points that I didn't have any money in my bank account from like one day to the next. I needed to wait for payments to come in so that I could actually live. Then I got a job working for a catalog company, and I put my maternity underwear into that catalog. I then actually went back into the city because I needed to earn money. And as I went back into the city, I had some very loving friends actually who said to me it was time to make that change. I really needed to believe in myself and believe that I could go back to the city. And I went into management consulting after that. And then I worked at an investment bank as a management consultant. But I had that kind of broad experience of failing, of believing that I could make something work and seeing it fail quite catastrophically, to be honest, and needing to get a new job so that I could actually survive. So much of this was about not tending to my needs, not being aware of what would actually work for me, about what I actually wanted. I was people-pleasing a lot of the time in this business, but I didn't have the kind of insight around that at that point. At the same time, I started to see that actually I really wanted to become a therapist. And I had to take many steps. So I worked full-time in the city and retrained. I did a master's for 5 years to become a psychotherapist. And I saw clients at the same time. And at some point I went down to 80%. So I worked 4 days a week to change careers. And so I didn't get it right first time. I had a go at selling maternity underwear, which didn't work. And now I feel full of joy and very fulfilled at my career choice. And when I really started to make the decision based on love believing that there was possibility, believing that I could try, believing that I could just start my master's in the first year and see how it went. I could trust that even if I didn't have all of the answers in the first year, or actually even know how I was going to afford to pay for it all, because it's very expensive actually to retrain as a psychotherapist. Well, my course was very expensive. To trust that I could try, to trust that the path forward would become clear. So I really found asking that question, is this a decision based on love or is this a decision based on fear? Very helpful all the way throughout. Now, I know might sound very abstract to you because starting to understand the motivation and the basis for some of your decisions might be very foreign. You might be very driven by what you think you have to do or what you think you need to do based on what other people consider important. And I want to encourage you to start to listen to that voice inside of you who holds your truth, who calls to be listened to, and who holds the truth of what you feel will really nourish you. And listen, we don't get that right first time. And sometimes we have to have many goes at something before we do find what we want to do. But it's all kind of on the path of learning. And on this path of post-traumatic growth, one of the most important things is starting to trust yourself, to believe that even if you make a mistake, that doesn't mean you don't trust yourself. That making mistakes or having failure is part of the experience, but you still back your own decisions. You back yourself, and that can feel like the hardest thing. So I'm really interested to hear if talking about post-traumatic growth is of interest to you. I think this is a really important part of a healing journey, and I really want to provide some hope. Hold hope for you that you can create something that you love, that you can change aspects of your life to work better for you. So let me know how this impacts you, and I hope that you take some hope from this and take a kind of an inkling, the beginning of a belief that you can change things and that you've got a lot of agency. Okay, take really good care. Bye.